tips on either starting your new job or starting your first job out of law school or college. Just try to be your best version of yourself. You want to seem very eager. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to give some general tips on either starting your new job or starting your first job out of law school or college. I'm sure it's a time where you're nervous of starting a new job or a new position and you don't really know about the new company. So I think if you follow these tips, then you'll have a great first experience. If you're new here, my name is Brittany and I'm a lawyer living in the Silicon Valley. I have a lot of videos on what it means to be a lawyer, how to be a lawyer, and now I'm going to do a video on how to be successful in your first job. I work in-house, so I work inside of a company. I do not work in a law firm, so my tips will also be transferable to those of you who are not lawyers but want to work inside of a company. So the first set of tips I have are on your first day. This is when you can really make the best impression because you're meeting everyone for the first time other than the interview, and you want to set a good impression. I would say the biggest tip is to be on time. You want to make sure you're there at least 10 minutes before you need to be there. Hopefully you've already set a start time with your boss, or if you have an orientation, you have an orientation time you need to be there by. So I would say try to be there at least 10 minutes early. That way you make sure you account for being late, for traffic, for getting lost, and you don't want to be late on your first day. In terms of attire, even if you're working for a startup or something that has more of a casual atmosphere, you want to make sure you still dress to impress. You know, maybe dress up a little nicer than you would have on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't have to be a full-on suit, obviously. You don't want to look out of place, but you don't want to look sloppy either. I would say you still want to set your best foot forward because even though you got the job, you want to set a good impression for the rest of the time you're at that company. Last, I would say if you took any notes during your interview process about the culture of the company, your boss, your coworkers, and hopefully you got a feel for them when you're interviewing with them, that will help you to also understand what your first day is going to be like. So, you know, if you kind of know that your boss gets there early, or if you know your boss expects a certain type of person to be prepared, or maybe they already want you to have some knowledge on things, brush up on it before you start. That way you can set up on the right foot. Next are some tips for the first 3 months. This is sort of your probationary, your introductory period. It's really the time when you're expected to ramp up, but understand that you are new at this company or new to working in general. So there's a lot of things that you need to understand. But I think people who are coming from college straight away, or even law school who went straight, they don't really know what it's like to work at a company. And I think the best thing is to learn from those around you and to always try your best to be the best version of yourself at work, at least in the beginning. So you always want to ask a lot of questions. You want to volunteer yourself for work. You don't want to say no to things if someone asks you to work on a project. You want to seem very eager and very open to doing pretty much anything, and that way your boss or your manager will be able to see that you have potential. If you see something is inefficient, or if you see a process that needs to be improved, take it to your boss and show initiative in telling them that, hey, you know, I noticed there's this gap or there's this issue that needs to be fixed. I'm willing to take it on and to fix it. And if you don't know, you know, I can reach out to this person to help or do this or that. I'm sure there's a lot of back burner projects that your boss or your coworker sort of forgot about because they're too busy, and now that you're here, you can take on those things and show initiative. Especially if you're working in-house, I would say during your downtime, take time to read all the contracts there are, the templates, privacy policy, different policies. Take your time so that you understand the set of documents that you have and more about the legal department and the legal processes. That way when you actually do the work, you have a better understanding, a better foundation, and a better background. For example, for me, I remember when I first started at this new job, I went through all of our master services agreements, I went through our terms and conditions, I went through our privacy policy, I went through all of the different templates we had for our contracts. That way when I actually negotiated them or drafted them, I knew the different provisions, the wording they use, the terminology, the definitions. And if you have questions, obviously ask them now. That way you are not struggling later on. Also take time to read through your manual, if there's a manual, to read through your website, to understand the company that you're working for, because there's a lot of questions that you may have and there's a lot of things that you don't know about the industry. So take the time to learn it now when you have a little more time. That way you can impress your boss and you can soak in more information when you learn things at meetings. Socially, you want to take the time to get to know people not only around you and on your team, but also in other business units. At least for lawyers, we work with everyone, and often sometimes we're met with a little bit of resistance because we're telling them that they can't do something or that they need to do this before they can get that. And so I think setting aside those times to get to know people in the beginning will help you later on when you ask for their help or ask them to do something. For me, I do a lot of vendor management, and so I work with different business units, and putting myself out there in the beginning and showing myself as a positive person that's helping them to get their deals done or helping them to get their new vendor onboarded, that is my main goal. I'm not here to be a roadblocker, and I think that's a main thing to help them feel more at ease with working with you and to see you as a business partner rather than a roadblock. So remember people's names, remember their roles. I try to keep a list of ask this person for this, ask this person for that. That way you know who your allies are and who can help you out when you need help. I would also say one thing to keep in mind is knowing when to leave. So obviously, unless you are hourly or there's a certain number of hours that you work, or you work from a certain time to a certain time for a specific reason, if it's sort of an open-ended, your salary, you can kind of come and go as you please. Use the first few weeks to understand what the culture is at your work. Do people tend to stay late? Do people tend to leave early? Even if you have to stay past when you would normally stay because your boss or your coworkers are still there, I would say to be safe, you should stay because you don't want to leave before your boss or before your coworkers if everyone is still working. Even if you don't have anything to do, you can always read or you can always learn more about the company during that time, but you want to set a good impression. Of course, if your boss tells you to leave or tells you, you can go every day at this time, then that's fine. But if you don't have that direction from them, sort of see what your coworkers do and see what your boss's cadence is. If they seem to come in early and they want you to be there before them, then definitely show up before them. If they don't care, then still try to set a good example in the beginning and then understand what you can sort of get away with. Basically, you want to set a good impression for your boss and for your manager, because once they have a negative impression of you, it's hard to overcome that, and it might negatively impact your work, and it's going to be with you for the rest of the time you're at that company. Also, unless necessary, I would say try not to take vacations or days off unless you really need to in the beginning, at least for the first 3 months, because again, you're setting that a good example, and you don't want to be someone that's just always gone or taking random vacations. Obviously, if they're pre-planned and you already told them about it, or if it's a certain holiday that you need to take off, that's understandable, but try to be there and be present as much as possible, especially if you have a work from home culture. If it seems like your boss is there every day, you don't really want to take work from home unless you not really need to, because you want to be present and you want to set a good impression for your boss. Last are some general tips. The first one should hopefully be obvious, but don't be late. Don't be careless. Double and triple check your work before you send out a contract. Make sure you did everything that you needed to do. If your boss is asking you to do something, make sure you read through all of their asks. Make sure you caught everything. If you're sending an email, make sure you read through it for any typos, grammar mistakes, other issues. Make sure you're sending it to the right person. You haven't replied at all when you were supposed to or something. You want to be especially careful when you're first starting a new job or you're at a new company, because you want to make sure that you don't make a mistake that could hurt you down the line. I would say if you have a coworker that you trust, ask them to read things or proofread things or double check things before you send things out or before you turn in work product. Also, in these open office environments, don't be on your phone all the time. Don't be browsing or the internet if you have free time, because people might see what's on your screen, or your boss or your manager or coworker might see that you're on your phone all the time, and it just looks bad. You want to seem like you're putting as much effort into your job as possible and you're not lazy. And so I would say try to keep that down at a minimum. Even if you take breaks or eat lunch at your desk, try to be cognizant of what you're doing. And if you're taking personal calls, that might seem a little distracting. So just try to be your best version of yourself at work, especially if you're a new grad and you have never worked at a company before. Don't feel entitled that you can do whatever you want because you think that's the culture of the company. Depending on your boss and your coworkers, everyone's different. So I would take the first few weeks, or at least the first few months, to understand what you can sort of get away with and what seems okay and what doesn't seem okay, because you don't want to be the person to push the envelope and then get in trouble for it and live with the consequences for the rest of the time you were at that company. So I would say be conservative in the beginning. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please comment below and let us know if there's any tips that you have for people who are starting their new job or their first job out of school. As usual, please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.